The lights hit first. For unmarked SUVs tear across the wet tarmac at RAF Nordholt at 11:47 p.m. Their blue strobes slicing through the rain like knives through silk. The black and gold private jet sits 200 meters ahead. Engines already humming, stairs already down, luggage already loaded. Whoever ordered that plane ready knew exactly what they were doing. They just didn't know who was already watching. Detective Inspector Sterling Vance steps out of the lead vehicle before it fully stops. His shoes hit a puddle. He doesn't flinch. He buttons his coat once, grips the warrant folder under his arm, and walks forward with the kind of calm that only comes from a man who has rehearsed this moment for 6 weeks straight. Behind him, 12 officers fan out in silence. No shouting, no running, just the sound of rain and boots and a clock that has finally run out. The ground crew sees them first. A young handler in a yellow vest freezes mid-signal, his orange wands dropping to his sides. He looks at the officers. He looks at the jet. He steps back and says nothing. Smart man. Inside the terminal glass, 3 members of the royal household staff watch the scene unfold with their hands pressed to the window. One of them reaches for a phone. An officer is already at the door before the call connects. Hi viewers, have you ever watched someone powerful finally get cornered and felt that strange mix of relief and disbelief all at once? Drop a yes or no in the comments right now, because what happens next on that tarmac is going to hit different. History is being rewritten by the very people who just tried to fly away with its treasures. And if you aren't part of this inner circle, you're choosing to be left in the dark when the final blow is dealt. Subscribe to this channel immediately, because once the palace shutters are closed, this window into the truth disappears forever. For those of you who still refuse to join our community, I challenge you to explain yourself in the comments. Are you really okay with the memory of the people's princess being erased? Or are you just waiting for the truth to be silenced once and for all? Vance reaches the base of the jet stairs and stops. He holds up the warrant folder toward the senior protection officer standing at the top. The man is broad, ex-military by his posture, and he looks down at Vance with exactly the expression of someone who has never been told no on behalf of his principal. This aircraft is being seized under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002, Vance says. His voice doesn't rise above the rain. It doesn't need to. Step aside. The protection officer doesn't move. Not for 3 full seconds. Then his earpiece crackles. Whatever comes through it drains the certainty from his face like water from a broken glass. He steps aside. Vance walks up the stairs and into the cabin. The interior smells of jasmine and leather. Cream walls. Gold fixtures. A vanity suite behind a frosted partition at the rear. The manifest declared this a routine diplomatic retreat flight. 3-month Mediterranean itinerary. Medical rest. Pre-approved by the Palace Communications team. Vance moves to the vanity suite. His forensic officer, a sharp woman named Deja Calloway, is already running a signal scanner along the interior panels. She pauses at the lower left wall section near the floor, taps it twice. The sound is wrong. Too dense. Too heavy. She looks at Vance. He nods once. They remove the panel. Inside, mounted flush against the reinforced interior hull, is a matte black digital tablet in a hardened case. The screen is lit. A progress bar fills the display. 73% deleted. Files are erasing themselves in real time, automated, pre-scheduled, built to wipe clean the moment the jet crossed into international airspace. Calloway lunges for it, kills the wireless signal, and freezes the deletion mid-process. Vance stares at what remains on the screen. Account numbers, transfer codes, a name repeated across 17 separate entries. His jaw tightens. He reaches for his radio. We need the financial crimes unit on the tarmac. Now. He pauses, eyes still locked on the tablet. And tell the prince we found it. Back across the wet tarmac, a black sedan with tinted windows sits perfectly still 200 meters from the police perimeter. The engine is off. The lights are off. But the figure in the rear seat hasn't moved in 40 minutes. Watching. Waiting. Already knowing. The palace hallway is 43 meters long and lit by lamps that cost more than most people's cars. At 6:14 a.m. on April 8, 2026, Prince William walks it alone. No aide. No protection officer at his elbow. Just the sound of his own shoes on marble and the weight of something he has carried for 4 months without putting it down once. He stops at the window at the far end and looks out over the gardens. The rain from last night still drips from the iron gate posts. Everything is gray. Everything is still. 3 floors up, behind a door guarded by 2 night shift nurses and a consultant who hasn't left the building in 9 days, King Charles sleeps. The official briefings use words like managed recovery and structured rest protocol. The people who actually sit beside his bed use different words, quieter ones, the kind you don't say out loud in front of cameras. William knows what those words mean. He has known since January. What the public sees is a monarchy in careful transition. Measured. Dignified. The king appearing at selected engagements, waving from windows, releasing statements drafted by a communications team that has become very skilled at choosing photographs where the light is kind. What William sees every morning is a father who is shrinking. Not in spirit, in presence, in time. And into that shrinking space, something has been moving. Quietly, methodically, the way water moves into a crack in a foundation before anyone notices the wall is leaning. Regency conversations had begun in November. Not official ones. The kind that happen in side rooms after formal meetings end and certain people linger. William had attended 3 such gatherings. He had said very little. He had listened to everything. He had watched who sat closest to whom, who deferred to whom, and most importantly, who was already behaving like the next chapter had been decided. He noticed that the Queen Consort's household staff had tripled its administrative footprint since September. New advisors, new accountants, a restructured legal team with specialty in international estate law. At the time, palace insiders called it modernization. William had filed it in a different folder in his mind and said nothing. Then Barnaby Thorne had called. Not through official channels. Not through a secretary or an equerry. A handwritten note, delivered through a former military contact, requesting a single private meeting. No subject line, just a sentence. There are numbers that don't add up, and I believe you need to see them before anyone else does. William had met him in a private room at a members' club in Mayfair on a Tuesday evening in December. Thorne had arrived with a leather folio, his hands slightly unsteady, his eyes checking the door twice before he sat down. He placed 3 printed pages on the table between them and said nothing for a moment. Then, these transfers don't exist in the official accounts, but they exist. William had looked at the numbers. Then he had looked at the destination accounts. Then he had sat very still for a long time. He hadn't slept properly since. Now, standing at the palace window with the gray morning pressing against the glass, he thinks about his father 3 floors up. About what it would do to a sick man to learn this. About the particular cruelty of being betrayed by someone you chose. About the fact that mercy and justice are not always the same direction. His phone vibrates in his pocket. He pulls it out. A single message from an unsaved number. For words. Vance found the tablet. William closes his eyes. Exhales slowly through his nose. When he opens them, his reflection in the window looks back at him with an expression that belongs to a king. Then his phone vibrates again. A second message from the same number. There's a second file. It's not about the money. Barnaby Thorne discovers the first ghost transfer on a Wednesday morning in November. Between his second cup of coffee and a budget reconciliation, he has run 11 times and cannot make balance. He is not a dramatic man. He does not have dramatic instincts. He is 51 years old, works in a windowless office in a government-adjacent financial oversight unit, and has spent 23 years finding the places where numbers lie. He is very good at it. He is good at it the way a good doctor is good at reading an X-ray. He sees the thing that shouldn't be there before he can explain why it unsettles him. The transfer is for £50 million. That alone is not unusual in the accounts he monitors. What is unusual is the routing. It moves through 4 intermediary accounts in 48 hours, each one dissolving behind it, until it lands in a private charter aviation trust registered in the Cayman Islands under a holding name that has no public directors and no traceable origin point. Clean, fast, practiced. Barnaby flags it internally. Waits 3 days. The flag is quietly removed from the system by someone with administrator-level clearance. No note, no explanation, just gone. He flags it again. This time, he saves a copy on a personal encrypted drive before submitting. He waits. The flag disappears again within 18 hours. Barnaby leans back in his chair and stares at the ceiling for a very long time. He is a small man in a large system. He has a mortgage, a daughter finishing university, a pension he has been carefully building for 2 decades. He knows exactly what it means to pull a thread that powerful people have decided should stay in the fabric. He pulls it anyway. Over 6 weeks, working only from his personal device and only from home between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., Barnaby maps the transfers. Not 1, not 3, 47 separate ghost transfers over 19 months, totaling an amount that makes his hand shake when he finally adds the column. £2.5 billion, moved in careful increments, always just below the threshold that triggers automatic international reporting flags. Whoever structured this knew the system. Knew it the way an insider knows it. He builds a second document. Parallel ledger. Every transfer, every routing number, every dissolving account. He labels it simply, the Camilla contingency. On the morning he finishes it, he arrives at his office to find his desk has been moved 6 inches to the left. A small thing, meaningless to anyone else. But Barnaby has sat at that desk for 9 years and he knows exactly where it belongs. Someone has been in his space. Someone is telling him they know. His hands are steady when he sits down. His face is calm. He opens his computer and begins his morning reconciliation like nothing has changed. But that evening, he writes the note to the former military contact. Handwritten. 1 sentence. 3 weeks later, across a table in a Mayfair members' club, he watches the Prince of Wales read 3 pages in complete silence. When William finally looks up, Barnaby speaks first. I've protected the full file. If anything happens to me before this is resolved, 3 separate copies reach 3 separate people automatically. He pauses. I'm telling you that not as a threat. I'm telling you so you know the trail doesn't end with me. William nods slowly. How long have you known? Long enough to be terrified, Barnaby says. Long enough to be sure. He drives home that night, parks in his driveway, sits in the dark car for a few minutes before going inside. On his kitchen table, under his coffee mug from that morning, is a white envelope. No stamp, no return address. He opens it with steady hands. Inside is a single index card, for printed words. Stop, while you can. Barnaby sets it down, looks at it, reaches for his phone and photographs it. Sends the image to 3 separate encrypted addresses. Then he puts the kettle on. William doesn't sleep the night after Mayfair. He sits at the desk in his private study at Kensington Palace until 3 a.m. with Barnaby's 3 pages in front of him, and the weight of a choice that has no clean answer pressing down on both shoulders. The room is quiet. Catherine is asleep. The house is still. And William is alone with a truth that, once he acts on it, cannot be unacted. He has been trained his entire life for duty. Trained to understand that the crown is not a person, it is a principle. That the institution must be protected even when the people inside it fail it. He has sat in rooms where old men explain to him, patiently and without apology, that certain things must be absorbed quietly, for the greater good, for the long picture, for the stability of something larger than any one individual's grievance. He has always accepted that, until now, because this isn't a grievance. This is a systematic financial extraction from the Crown estates, from duchy accounts that belong not to any individual but to the institution itself, redirected into private offshore structures designed to guarantee one person's power regardless of what happens next. And what happens next, in the cold clinical language of the medical briefings William has been receiving since January, is a question of months, not years. His father doesn't know. That is the part that sits in William's chest like something with edges. Charles, weakened and medicated and choosing to spend his limited good hours in the garden and with his grandchildren, has no idea that the person he chose, the person he fought the entire world to stand beside, has spent 19 months quietly looting the future of everything he built. William could tell him. He has considered it 17 times in the last 3 weeks. Each time he arrives at the same image. His father's face. The confusion first. Then the understanding. Then the particular devastation that comes from being betrayed by someone you loved publicly and painfully and at great cost. It would not kill him, but it would take something from him that his body cannot afford to lose. So William makes a different choice. He picks up his personal phone. Not the official one. The number he dials is not in any contact list. It rings twice. "It's me," William says. "We move when she moves. Not before." A pause. And Vance needs to be ready. The moment that Jet gets a departure slot, "I want the warrant executed on the tarmac." Another pause, longer this time, as the voice on the other end asks something. William's jaw tightens. "No. My father doesn't get told until it's done. That's not negotiable." He ends the call, sets the phone face down on the desk, sits for a moment longer with his hands flat on the wood. Then he picks up Barnaby's pages, locks them in the desk drawer, and goes to stand at the window. The London night is quiet and orange-lit and entirely unaware of what is being prepared inside this room. He thinks about his mother, about what she knew and couldn't say and carried alone in spaces exactly like this one, about the particular loneliness of being the person who sees the truth before everyone else and has to hold it long enough to act on it without being crushed by it. He holds it. The next morning, an encrypted message reaches Barnaby Thorne's phone at 7:22 a.m. "Keep watching the accounts. Tell me the moment the Aviation Trust receives a new transfer." Barnaby reads it twice, types back one word. "Understood." For days later, at 9:11 p.m. on a Thursday, his phone buzzes. It just moved. 40 million. Departure fuel costs. They're going. William is in a formal dinner when the message comes through. He excuses himself, walks to the corridor, reads it, returns to the table, finishes the dinner without changing his expression once. But under the table, his hand, pressed flat against his knee, is absolutely still. Too still. The stillness of a man who has made his decision and crossed the line in his own mind and is now simply waiting for the world to catch up. The question no one at that dinner table thinks to ask is the one that matters most. Who else knows what William knows? And why, in the last 72 hours, has the Queen Consort's private security detail been quietly, systematically replaced? At 9:45 p.m., the bags are already at the foot of the jet stairs. 17 pieces. Matched luggage in cream and camel with monogrammed clasps. 2 wardrobe cases. 1 personal effects trunk. Reinforced sides, combination locked. The ground crew moves them with the efficiency of people who have done this before and know not to ask questions about weight. Inside the private terminal at RAF Nordholt, the Queen Consort sits with a cup of chamomile tea and her phone pressed to her ear. She is composed. She has been composed all week, all month, through the medical briefings and the Regency whispers and the careful dance of managing optics while managing a much larger operation running underneath the optics. She has a gift for appearing serene exactly when she should appear frightened. It is perhaps her most dangerous quality. The call she is on is with her legal team in Monaco. She asks 3 questions. She listens to the answers. She thanks them and ends the call and takes a slow sip of tea. Outside, through the terminal glass, she can see her jet. The black and gold aircraft gleams under the floodlights even in the rain. The engines are not yet running, but the fuel line is attached, the stairs are down, and the flight plan has been filed. Her chief of staff, a lean woman named Adrienne Osei, approaches from across the lounge. "We're 30 minutes from boarding, ma'am. All pre-flight checks are green. And the manifest? Filed as approved. Mediterranean retreat. Medical advisory notation included." Adrienne pauses. "Everything is in order." The filed destination is a coastal estate in the south of France. A 3-month rest itinerary, pre-approved by the Palace Communications Office. The actual flight plan, the one filed under the charter company's secondary registration, routes through French airspace and then diverts. The final destination is a private airstrip in a country with no extradition arrangement with the United Kingdom. The Queen Consort has not packed for 3 months. She has packed for much longer. In the cargo hold, loaded at midnight 4 days ago by a private handling crew who were paid in cash and signed nothing, sits a single unmarked crate. Black exterior, steel reinforced. The manifest lists it as medical equipment. It is locked with a 10-digit code and weighs, according to the loadmaster's private notes that he will later hand to D.I. Vance, approximately 470 kilograms. Medical equipment does not weigh 470 kilograms. 22 miles away, in a grey fleet vehicle parked outside a nondescript building in West London, Deja Calloway is staring at a live feed from a Nordholt ground surveillance camera. She watches the luggage loading. She watches the crate positioning. She makes a note of the weight reading from the cargo sensor embedded in the hold floor and sends the number to Vance with a single line. "That's not clothes." Vance reads it in the back of the lead SUV. He looks at the 4 vehicles idling around him. He looks at the departure clock on his phone. 19 minutes until the filed departure window opens. 18 minutes until the plane becomes, legally, an aircraft in pre-departure sequence and the jurisdictional ground shifts. "Move in 17 minutes, he says quietly. Not a second later. Back inside the terminal, the Queen Consort sets down her tea. Stands. Smooths her coat with both hands. She looks at herself briefly in the reflection of the terminal glass and sees what she always sees. A woman who has survived everything they threw at her. Tabloids. Public hatred. Years of being positioned as the villain in someone else's love story. She has outlasted all of it. She picks up her handbag, turns toward the boarding corridor, and stops, because the departure lounge television, muted in the background all evening, has just cut to a breaking news banner. She can't hear it, but she can read the lower third text scrolling across the screen. She reads it once. Her face does not move. She reads it again. Then she looks out at the jet. Then at the main entrance to the terminal. Then at Adrienne, who has not yet seen the television. The Queen Consort's hand, resting on the strap of her handbag, tightens slowly until her knuckles go white. The news banner reads, Metropolitan Police Special Unit deploys to RAF Nordholt. Sources confirm active financial crimes warrant. No further details available. She knew this was a possibility. She planned for this. She has a response prepared. What she did not plan for, what no preparation in the world could have accounted for, is the thing she notices in the next 3 seconds. Her personal protection officer, the one she has had for 6 years, is no longer standing at the door. A different man is there. Someone she does not recognize. Someone who does not acknowledge her when she looks at him. And he is already watching her. Vance's shoe hits the top step of the jet stairs at exactly 11:59 p.m. He doesn't pause. Doesn't announce himself twice. He walks through the cabin door and turns immediately toward the rear of the aircraft where 3 household staff members are frozen in place. Backs against the cream-paneled wall, eyes wide, hands visible. Good. He looks past them to the frosted partition at the far end. Behind it, he can hear breathing. Controlled. Deliberate. The breathing of someone who has decided how this moment will go and is waiting for everyone else to catch up to their script. Vance pulls the partition open. She is seated. Back straight. Coat still on. Handbag on her lap with both hands resting on top of it. The Queen Consort looks at Detective Inspector Sterling Vance the way a person looks at something they consider beneath their notice. It is a practiced look. Decades in the making. This is an outrage, she says. Quiet. Clipped. Not a shout. A declaration. Vance holds up the warrant folder and sets it on the seat across from her without a word. She doesn't look at it. You will call the palace, she says. Right now. You will speak to the king's private secretary and you will explain what you think you're doing, and this will be over inside 20 minutes. Vance clasps his hands in front of him. Ma'am, the aircraft is seized under the Proceeds of Crime Act. No calls are being made from this cabin until our communications team has reviewed all devices present. Something shifts in her face. Small. Fast. Gone in under a second. But Vance catches it because Vance catches everything. My phone, she says, is a personal device protected under. It's been flagged under the warrant, Vance says. Our technical officer will handle it. She stands. And in the close space of the rear cabin, standing, she is formidable. Years of public life have given her a physical authority that most people back away from instinctively. The air in the cabin changes when she rises. 3 of the officers near the partition take an involuntary half-step backward. Vance does not move. I am the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, she says. Each word lands separately, like stones dropped onto marble. Yes, ma'am, Vance says. And I have a warrant signed by a high court judge issued 4 hours ago. He lets that sit for exactly 3 seconds. You're welcome to contest it through your legal team. I'd suggest calling them now, while you still have access to your phone. She sits back down. Slowly. The way a person sits when they are recalculating rather than retreating. Behind her, through the oval window of the jet, the tarmac lights of RAF Nordholt blaze white against the rain. 12 officers in high-visibility jackets move in careful coordinated lines around the aircraft. 2 forensic vans have pulled up alongside the cargo hold. Deja Calloway stands at the hold door with bolt cutters and a case number already logged on her tablet. Inside the terminal building, the household staff who didn't make it to the plane are being held separately. 3 of them are already on the phone to lawyers. One of them, a young personal secretary named Marcus Webb, is not calling a lawyer. He is sitting very still in a plastic chair with his hands between his knees and his eyes on the floor, and when the duty officer asks him if he wants representation, he shakes his head slowly and says, I'll talk. Vance gets the message from his colleague in the terminal and reads it without changing his expression. He looks at the Queen Consort. He thinks about what Marcus Webb is about to say and what it will mean for the next 12 hours. "Can I get you some water?" he asks. She looks at him like he has just spoken a foreign language. He nods once and steps back toward the partition. His radio crackles. His forensic lead's voice comes through low and tight with the specific energy of someone trying to sound calm and failing by 1 degree. "Vance, you need to come to the hold. Right now." He is already moving before she finishes the sentence. He takes the stairs in 4 steps, hits the tarmac, rounds the nose of the aircraft to the cargo bay. Calloway is standing at the open hold with her flashlight aimed at the unmarked crate. The lid has been removed. She doesn't say anything. She just moves aside so he can see. Vance looks into the crate. He stands there for 6 full seconds without speaking. Then he turns away from the crate, faces the rain-soaked tarmac, and makes a call. 1 ring. 2. The voice answers on the 3rd. "Sir," Vance says. "The crate is open." Pause. "It's not just the money. The gold bar is cold." Calloway lifts it with both hands, turns it once under the cargo bay light, and sets it on the examination table her team has assembled on the tarmac in 12 minutes flat. It is stamped, dated, and the hallmark pressed into its surface does not belong to any royal treasury, any national reserve, or any institution that has ever appeared in a legitimate financial disclosure. It belongs to a private vault registry in Luxembourg that was officially dissolved in 2003. There are 41 more of them in the crate. Behind the gold bars, stacked in vacuum-sealed document sleeves, are bearer bonds. 37 separate instruments across 4 currencies, each one representing a claim on assets held in accounts that have no named owner, no public record, and no connection to the crown on any document that has ever been filed with the Treasury. Beside the bonds, in a separate waterproof case with a combination lock that Calloway's team cuts through in under 3 minutes, are rare coins. Not display pieces. Not collector items. Liquidation ready. Pre-appraised. Individually cataloged in a handwritten ledger tucked flat beneath them. The ledger is 61 pages long. Every page is dated. The entries begin in September 2024 and run through March 2026. Each line records a transfer, an acquisition, or a conversion. The handwriting is small and precise and entirely consistent from the first page to the last. At the bottom of the crate, beneath everything else, sealed inside a matte black document envelope with a wax closure, is a single bound folder. Cream cover. No title. Calloway opens it under the cargo light with gloved hands. The first page reads, Contingency Framework, Personal Security of Position. Confidential. Initiated, February 1996. 29 years ago. Before the divorce was final. Before the public had processed what was coming. Before anyone outside a very small circle understood how far ahead certain plans were being drawn. Calloway photographs every page before she touches anything else. She sends the files to Vance's secure device in real time. He reads while walking. He stops walking somewhere between the cargo bay and the jet stairs and stands absolutely still in the middle of the wet tarmac. The framework is not just a financial plan. It is a contingency structure built across 3 phases. Phase 1. Accumulation, moving assets into untraceable offshore positions over a long period in amounts small enough to avoid automatic flags. Phase 2. Consolidation, converting liquid cash into physical assets that carry no digital trail. Phase 3. Extraction, exiting the jurisdiction before any successor authority could freeze access or initiate recovery proceedings. The document names accounts. It names structures. It names the private aviation trust that Barnaby Thorne had flagged in November. And on page 14, in a section marked Asset Origin Source Classification, it names something else. Calloway is reading the same page on her own device when she looks up at Vance across the tarmac. "These aren't just Dutchy funds," she says. She says it quietly, the way people say things they wish they didn't have to say out loud. "Some of these assets." She stops, looks back at the page. "They're listed under a prior estate portfolio, the origin classification codes." She turns the device so Vance can see the screen clearly. "These are Wales estate codes. They match the asset classification system used for the late princess's private holdings." The rain is loud on the tarmac. Vance takes the device, reads the page, reads it again. He thinks about the timeline. 1996. The quiet liquidation of estates and personal property portfolios in the years after the divorce. Assets that were meant, by private agreement and by reasonable expectation, to pass to the two boys. Assets that instead moved sideways into structures that dissolved their names and replaced them with nothing but numbers. He thinks about a boy growing up and becoming a man and never knowing that pieces of his mother's legacy had been systematically converted into someone else's exit fund. His phone vibrates. A message from the prince's contact. "Is it what we thought?" Vance types back 4 words. "It's worse. Much worse." Inside the seized jet, the Queen Consort sits alone in the rear cabin. The officers have stepped to the forward section. She has her handbag on her lap and her eyes on the oval window and the expression of a woman who is running every remaining option she has and finding each one shorter than the last. She has 1 card left. 1 piece of information that no court document, no warrant, and no financial ledger can touch. She has been saving it for 30 years. The sapphire is the size of a thumbnail. Calloway finds it at the bottom of the waterproof case, beneath the coin ledger, wrapped in a square of cream velvet tied with a white ribbon that has yellowed slightly at the edges with age. She almost sets it aside as personal jewelry, routine to catalog later. Then she unwraps it and holds it under the light and stops breathing for just a moment. She knows what it is. Most people would. It has been in enough photographs, enough documentaries, enough anniversary tributes that its shape is embedded in public memory the way certain images become permanent once they exist long enough. It is not the ring itself. The ring itself is on another hand in another country and has been for years. This is the matching piece. The companion brooch from the same commission, the one that was never photographed publicly, never listed in any official royal collection inventory, and was reported as lost in the estate dispersal documentation filed in 1997. Not lost. Here. In a sealed case in a cargo hold. In a jet that was 20 minutes from leaving the country permanently. Calloway bags it, tags it, logs it under evidence item 44. Then she sits down on the edge of the cargo bay platform in the rain and takes 3 slow breaths because she is a professional and professionals do not cry on active scenes. She takes 3 more breaths. Then she stands up and keeps working. When Vance sees the evidence photograph on his device, he stops walking again. He looks at it for a long time. He thinks about what it means legally. He thinks about what it means as a piece of evidence. And then, underneath all of that, he thinks about what it means as a human fact. 47 ghost transfers. £2.5 billion. A contingency plan drafted in 1996. Bearer bonds and gold bars and rare coins catalogued for liquidation. And at the bottom of all of it, wrapped in velvet, a piece of jewelry that belonged to a woman who died in a tunnel in Paris and whose sons were told certain things were simply gone. The money is a crime. The scale of it is staggering and the evidence is airtight, and the legal process will now run its course through courts and hearings and asset recovery proceedings that will take years. But the brooch is something else. The brooch is the answer to a question that William has never asked out loud, because asking it out loud would mean accepting the possibility that the answer was this. Vance makes the call himself. Not through the contact. Directly to the number William gave him 6 weeks ago for exactly this situation. It rings once. It's Vance. He pauses. We found the brooch, sir. The Kensington Commission piece. Another pause, longer. It was with the bonds. In the cargo hold. He listens. The line is very quiet. He waits. Sir. He waits again. Take as long as you need. On the other end of the call, in the back of the black sedan parked 200 meters from the police perimeter, William says nothing for 41 seconds. Vance counts them. When William speaks, his voice is level, steady. The voice of a man who has placed everything he is feeling into a room, closed the door on it, and locked it for later. Bring me in, he says. The sedan moves for the first time in 40 minutes. It rolls slowly across the wet tarmac, past the forensic vans, past the officers, past the seized aircraft with its lights still blazing against the rain, and stops at the base of the jet stairs. William steps out. He doesn't look at the crate. He doesn't look at the officers. He looks at the jet stairs, and then he looks up at the oval window of the rear cabin, and for just a moment he stands absolutely still in the rain. His mother loved that brooch. He knows because she told him. She told him once, when he was small enough to still sit in her lap without it being a thing they both had to pretend wasn't happening, that certain pieces weren't about the stones or the metal. They were about being remembered. He squares his shoulders, walks to the stairs, starts climbing. Whatever happens in the next 10 minutes inside that cabin, the world will not know about immediately. There are no cameras on the tarmac, no press pool, no live feed. Just rain and officers standing at a respectful distance, and a son walking up the stairs to face the woman who took something that was never hers to take. The question that hangs in the wet air over RAF Nordholt, the one that will keep every person watching this story awake tonight, is this: what does a man say to someone like that when he is finally standing in the same room? The door to the rear cabin closes with a soft click. No cameras, no aides, no protection officers. Just William standing at the partition and the Queen Consort seated at the rear, handbag still in her lap, eyes moving from his face to the door and back again with the rapid calculation of someone scanning for an exit that isn't there. He pulls the partition curtain fully back and takes the seat directly across from her. Sits with his hands on his knees. Says nothing. She speaks first. That surprises neither of them. It was always going to be her. You should have come to me, she says. Before all of this, we could have handled it quietly. Your father doesn't need this kind of... Stop. William's voice is flat. Not loud. Not angry. Just a single word with a wall behind it. She stops. He looks at her for a long moment. Then he reaches into his coat and places a photograph on the seat between them. A printed still from the evidence log. Evidence item 44. Wrapped in cream velvet. She looks at it. Her jaw tightens. The first real crack in her composure, thin as a hairline fracture but visible if you know where to look, and William is looking directly at it. That was accounted for in the estate dispersal, she says. It was legally. It was never listed, William says. I've had 3 estate attorneys review every document filed between 1997 and 2002. It doesn't appear anywhere. It was removed from the inventory before the inventory was finalized. She says nothing. 29 years, William says. You had it for 29 years. The rain presses against the oval windows. Somewhere outside, a forensic team is cataloging 41 gold bars and bearer bonds worth more than the GDP of a small country. Inside this cabin, none of that matters as much as the 12 inches of space between 2 people who have hated each other across a lifetime of formal dinners and public appearances and careful smiles. I'm not here to arrest you, William says. Vance has that handled. I'm here to tell you personally what happens next. He leans forward slightly. By morning, the Financial Crimes Unit will have completed its initial asset mapping. The offshore trusts will be frozen within 48 hours through the International Recovery Protocol. Your legal team will receive the full disclosure package at 9 a.m. He pauses. And the Palace Communications Office will be releasing a statement confirming the voluntary relinquishment of all administrative and household powers, effective immediately. She tilts her head. 1 degree. Voluntary. That's the word we're using. And if I don't sign anything voluntary, then it isn't voluntary, William says simply. And the statement reads differently. The silence between them is the kind that has texture. Presses back. She looks at him with something that might be respect, if respect could share a face with fury. You're more like her than you know, she says. Not as a compliment, not as an insult, as a fact being acknowledged by someone who spent decades trying to make it untrue. William doesn't respond to that. She leans forward. Her voice drops to the register she uses when she wants words to land without witnesses. You think you've cleaned the house, she says. You think this is the whole story. Her eyes are steady and absolutely certain. Ask your father what he knew in 1996. Ask him what he agreed to. Ask him why the framework document has his initials on page 1. The cabin air changes. William's face does not move. Not one muscle. But something behind his eyes shifts the way a foundation shifts before anyone on the surface knows the ground is moving. Ask him, she says again quietly, before you decide who the villain is in this story. William stands, straightens his coat, picks up the photograph from the seat between them and puts it back in his pocket. The relinquishment papers will be brought to you at 7 a.m., he says. His voice is the same as when he sat down. Level, controlled. The voice of a man who will not let her see what she just did to him. Sign them. He walks to the partition, stops with his back to her.
Whatever my father knew or didn't know, he says quietly, doesn't change what you did, or what you took. He pushes the curtain aside. It just means I have more questions to ask in the morning. He walks out of the cabin. On the tarmac, the rain has slowed to a thin mist. Vance falls into step beside him without being asked. They walk in silence for a few meters. Well, Vance says. William looks straight ahead. She signed nothing yet. She will by morning. A pause. Pull my father's full correspondence archive from the 1995 to 1997 period. Don't tell anyone why. Don't log the request through the standard channel. Another pause. Do it tonight. Vance doesn't ask the follow-up question. He simply nods once and peels away toward the forensic vans. William keeps walking. Into the mist. Into a question he did not have when he climbed those stairs and cannot put back down now that it exists. His father's initials. Page 1. By 11:03 p.m., the rain stops. It doesn't slow down or taper off. It simply stops, the way things stop when the decision has already been made and the atmosphere has no reason to keep performing. The tarmac at RAF Nordholt glistens under the floodlights, every puddle reflecting white, and the black and gold jet sits motionless and sealed with yellow asset seizure tape running across its stairs and cargo doors like the last word in a sentence that took 30 years to finish. The forensic vans are packed and pulling out. The uniformed officers have reduced to a small perimeter team. The terminal lights are low. The ground crew that was here 2 hours ago loading 17 matching bags onto a plane headed, officially, to the Mediterranean is gone. It is quiet in the way that only comes after something enormous has happened and the world hasn't processed it yet. Deja Calloway sits on the hood of a fleet vehicle and types her final evidence log entry for the night. 44 items. Every one photographed, bagged, tagged, and chain of custody documented. She will testify to this in court and she will be unshakable because she is always unshakable and because she knows what is in that crate and what it means and she wants it to stick. Inside the terminal, Marcus Webb is still talking. He has been talking for 2 hours and 20 minutes and he has not asked for a lawyer once. He is not a person who schemed or planned or moved money. He is a young man who saw things he wasn't supposed to see and was afraid for a long time and then became more afraid of staying quiet than of speaking. His account is detailed, consistent, and corroborated by 3 separate digital records that Barnaby Thorne's parallel ledger already flagged. Everything he says matches. Everything connects. The relinquishment papers are delivered to the rear cabin at 7:04 a.m. 2 copies. Plain language. No ceremony. The Queen Consort reads them twice. Her solicitor, who arrived at the terminal at 3 a.m. and has been reviewing the warrant and the evidence disclosure package in silence ever since, places his hand briefly on the table near hers. Not a reassurance. A professional signal. The kind lawyers give when the math no longer works in your favor and prolonging it serves no one. She signs at 7:21 a.m. Both copies. Every page. Without speaking. The Palace Communications Office releases the statement at 9 a.m. precisely. Carefully worded. Sparse. It confirms a voluntary administrative restructuring of the Queen Consort's household responsibilities, effective immediately, citing a desire to support the King's continued recovery. Contains no mention of RAF Nordholt. No mention of the warrant. No mention of 44 items of evidence or a 29-year-old contingency framework or a sapphire brooch wrapped in cream velvet that spent 3 decades in a cargo box instead of being passed down to the people it was meant for. That statement will not hold the full story for long. The full story has too many moving parts, too many people who know pieces of it, too many documents that will surface through legal proceedings over the coming months. But it holds long enough for a king who is resting 3 floors up in a palace to sleep through the morning without his phone ringing with something that would take from him what his body cannot afford to lose. Not yet. William chooses that. He makes the choice deliberately, clearly, and without regret. His father will know. Just not today. Today belongs to the mechanics of justice, to asset freezes and legal filings and an international recovery protocol that will take years to fully execute. Today belongs to Barnaby Thorne, who receives a single encrypted message at 8:45 a.m. that reads, "It held. Thank you." Today belongs to Calloway, who drives home at sunrise with mud on her boots and evidence photographs burned into her memory that she will carry for the rest of her career. By mid-morning, William stands at the window of his private study at Kensington Palace. The same window, the same London skyline. But something is different in the quality of the light, or in the quality of the man standing in it, or both. The tension that has lived in his shoulders for 4 months is not gone. There is still a question in his coat pocket, folded up small. His father's initials, page 1, 1996. That question will need an answer. He will find it. He will sit across from his father, in a quiet room at the right moment, and he will ask it the same way he has handled everything in these 4 months. Carefully, without flinching, with the full understanding that some truths are excavated, not delivered, and that a man who loves his father can still hold his father to account. Justice was not loud last night. It was precise. It moved like a surgeon's hand, not a hammer. It left the institution standing and removed what was hollowing it from the inside. That is not weakness. That is the hardest kind of strength there is. The empty throne is not really empty. It never was. It was just waiting for someone willing to protect it at personal cost, without applause in the rain at midnight, while the rest of the world slept. William watches the morning settle over London. Puts one hand flat against the cold glass. And somewhere beneath all the weight he is still carrying, something that has been clenched for 4 months opens, just slightly like a room finally getting air. The story that began on a rain-soaked tarmac at 11:47 p.m. does not end with a verdict or a prison gate or a headline. It ends here, quietly, with a man at a window and a city that doesn't yet know what was protected on its behalf last night. That is how real power works. Not in the noise. In the silence after. If the story moved you, if it made you feel the weight of truth, loyalty, and what it costs to do the right thing when no one is watching, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Subscribe right now and turn on every notification, because the stories coming next are deeper, heavier, and more powerful than anything you have seen here. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that integrity is still the most powerful force in any room. And drop your thoughts in the comments below because your voice matters here. Every single one is read, and you just might inspire someone else to keep going. Do not miss what comes next.